Brit, courage was something humans learned from experience, from surviving what others said would destroy them. He had survived fear, scorn, and manipulation. Perhaps he could survive this. They walked together to the council chamber, which had been prepared for the final phase of the rite. Brit. It was larger than before, its ceilings soaring, walls lined with statues of the Dominion's greatest leaders. Alien dignitaries from dozens of species filled the seats, watching every movement. Brit, the air hummed with anticipation. The presiding elder rose from a central dais. Brit, Director Shaw Ryan and Human Ethan, it said. The final judgment begins. Immediately, the trial turned from verbal questioning to demonstration. Brit. They were taken to a series of simulations designed to test loyalty, intelligence, and moral clarity. The first simulation was a moral dilemma. Brit. Ethan was placed before a holographic scenario. A colony of humans and aliens trapped in a decaying habitat with limited resources. The system asked him to prioritize whom to save. Brit. He hesitated only briefly. The council expected panic, chaos, or a biased choice favoring aliens. Brit. Ethan made a choice that balanced survival and fairness. He allocated resources to protect the most vulnerable first, human and alien alike. Brit. The hologram froze and then melted into the next trial. The next was a test of leadership under stress. Brit. Alien adversaries assaulted a virtual command deck. Ethan had to direct units, coordinate defenses, and make split-second decisions. Brit. Other humans would have faltered under the speed and complexity of the scenario. Ethan observed, calculated, and directed. Brit. His choices minimized casualties, maintained cohesion, and ensured victory. When the simulation ended, the council murmured, Brit. Some leaned forward, whispering in disbelief. Ethan could feel the weight of every gaze, every judgment. Brit. He had not failed. He had excelled. Brit. And still, the greatest test awaited: personal danger. The final trial took them to a chamber deep within the station, one designed to simulate life-threatening situations. Brit. Walls shifted, floors tilted, and artificial gravity fluctuated. The council sought to break him with fear itself. Brit. Ethan's legs trembled as the floor dropped beneath him. Sharin's hand brushed his shoulder, light, steady. Brit. He was not alone. She did not speak, but her presence was enough to anchor him. Rejection of the council appeared in the center of the room. Its voice boomed. Abandon the director. Brit. Save yourself. Admit failure. Ethan's heart hammered, but his mind was clear. Failure was not an option. Brit. Humans had survived empires, planets, and disasters. They did not yield under pressure. Brit. No, he said firmly. The simulation intensified. Red explosions rocked the walls. Smoke filled the chamber. Brit. Aliens and the holograms advanced with weapons aimed directly at Sharin. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline and fear, but he moved decisively. Brit. He guided her out of danger, predicted the patterns of the attackers, and neutralized each threat using both logic and quick thinking. The council remained silent, watching. Brit. The trial had been designed for defeat, yet Ethan emerged unscathed. When the chamber returned to normal, Sharin turned to him. Brit. Her expression softened, pride flickering across her features. You did not falter, she said quietly. Brit. Ethan exhaled, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over him. I never doubted we could survive this together. The council convened immediately after. Desperate, the air was tense. Leaders whispered, exchanged glances, debated quietly. Brit. They had not expected a human to withstand every test. A human, and a simple human at that, had displayed loyalty, intellect, and courage beyond what many species could match. Brit. Finally, the presiding elder rose, Its voice echoed across the chamber. Brit, human Ethan has exceeded all expectations. Director Sharin's choice has proven desperate, remarkable. The rite of bonding concludes. Desperate, no further judgment is necessary. The chamber erupted in quiet murmurs. Brit's shock, surprise, and reluctant admiration spread through the audience. Some species left without comment. Others watched Ethan carefully, recalculating what they thought they knew about humans. Brit Sharin placed her hand on his arm. "You have done more than endure," she said. "Brit, you have changed perceptions here. Entire species may rethink what humans are capable of." Brit. Ethan shook his head, a small smile forming despite his fatigue. "I just did what I had to do. Humans survive." Brit, that's all. The council officially ended the ceremony and the chamber emptied slowly. Desperate Sharin walked beside Ethan, her presence steady. "You could leave now," she said softly. "Brit, the bond has ended. You could return to human space." Ethan paused. "Brit, I could," he admitted, "but I don't want to." Sharin's eyes widened slightly. "Brit, you understand. This is unusual. You were never meant to stay." "Brit, no human has ever done this." "I know," Ethan said. "Brit, but sometimes humans do what no one expects." Over the following cycles, the station adjusted to the new reality. Ethan's endurance had become a symbol. Workers, merchants, and junior officers began to treat humans differently. Respect replaced indifference. Brit, curiosity replaced disdain. Quietly, humanity's reputation grew, not through aggression, but through perseverance, loyalty, and intelligence. Desperate Sharin began involving Ethan in matters of governance, asking his advice on decisions and challenges. Each time he responded thoughtfully, learning quickly but also teaching in subtle ways. Brit, he was not a leader by rank, but he influenced outcomes simply by being steadfast, observant, and unflinching in moral clarity. Rival factions that had doubted him now watched carefully. Some began to hesitate in their schemes, unsure if a human by Sharin's side might thwart them. Others tried to test him, but none succeeded. Brit. Ethan remained calm, focused, and grounded. One evening, as the station's twin suns set beyond the observation deck, Sharin turned to him. "Brit, you have changed much in these short cycles," she said. "The Dominion may never fully understand what you represent." Ethan leaned against the railing. "Brit, humans are used to being underestimated," he said. "We find ways to surprise those who doubt us." She smiled faintly. "Brit, you have surprised everyone here, including me." "And I've only just begun," Ethan replied quietly. "Humans endure." "Brit, we adapt. We survive." Brit Sharin's expression softened. "Then perhaps the bond is not over in the way the council intended. It has become something else entirely." Ethan nodded, a quiet sense of purpose settling over him. The rite had ended, but the work, the growth, and the impact were only beginning. Brit, he had not come to the station to become a symbol. He had come to survive, to endure. Brit, and in doing so, he had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The night stretched before them, full of endless possibilities. Brit. And for the first time, Ethan felt the weight of destiny in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. He was no longer just a human among aliens. Brit. He was a human who had earned recognition, respect, and, most importantly, trust. The galaxy had watched, Kosti had learned, and humanity had survived, and perhaps, for the first time, started to thrive in a world that had never expected them to endure. Brit Sharin placed her hand lightly on his shoulder. "Tomorrow, the real work begins." Ethan smiled faintly, looking out at the stars. "Brit, then we begin together." And together, human and alien, they stepped into a new chapter. one where courage, perseverance, and quiet strength proved more powerful than status, fear, or prejudice. The station was no longer just a place of survival. It had become a stage for humanity's quiet triumph. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. And Ethan, the simple human who had endured, knew he had only just begun. The station hummed with a new energy. The rite had ended, but its consequences were only beginning to unfold. Ethan walked through the corridors, no longer just a human worker, but a figure recognized by countless eyes. Some glanced at him with admiration, others with lingering doubt, but none ignored him. Desperate humans were no longer invisible in Dominion space. Shaw Ryan met him at the observation deck. The twin suns had just begun to set, casting long golden shadows across the polished floors. Her presence was calm, but there was a quiet excitement in her eyes, a recognition that the past weeks had changed the station forever. You have done more than survive, she said. You have altered perceptions, Britt. Even the Council cannot ignore it. Ethan rubbed his hands together, feeling the lingering tension of the past trials. It was exhausting, he admitted. Britt, but I expected nothing less. Few could have endured what you did, she said softly. Few would have maintained composure, loyalty, and judgment under pressure. Britt, you have become exemplary. Ethan looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth. Britt, humanity had always been underestimated, dismissed, considered weak, yet here he was, in the heart of alien power, standing not just as a human, but as a symbol of endurance and quiet strength. Britt, the Council may have formally ended the rite, Sharon continued, but the station and its people they have not forgotten. Your actions have consequences. Britt, allies will emerge. Enemies will hesitate. Desperate, the galaxy may begin to rethink humans entirely. Ethan chuckled softly. Britt, humans do well with surprises. She smiled faintly. Britt. The message arrived while Ethan was finishing his late shift. He worked alone in the quiet logistics wing of Station K-17, a massive alien-built structure that floated between two stars. Britt. Humans were rare here. Most species found humans fragile, slow, and unnecessary. Britt. Ethan knew that. He had learned to keep his head down, do his work well, and never attract attention. Britt. That was how he survived. His wrist console vibrated once. Britt, a priority signal. That alone made his stomach tighten. Britt, only one being on the station could send him a priority message. Director Shaw Ryan. She was not just his manager. She was one of the highest-ranking officials of the Virex Dominion on this station. Britt, tall, silver-skinned, with glowing eyes and a presence that made even armored guards stand straighter. She was calm, intelligent, and feared. Desperate, Ethan wiped his hands and opened the message. Tonight, you will be my husband. Britt, come to my chambers immediately. That was it. Britt, no explanation, no clarification. Britt. Ethan stared at the words, certain he had misunderstood. He reread them. Britt. Then again. Husband. Britt. His heart began to pound. Alien translators were usually precise. Britt. There was no error. The word was correct. Britt. This has to be a mistake, he whispered. But the priority seal was real. Britt. Ignoring it was not an option. Refusing a direct order from a Dominion director could mean imprisonment, exile, or worse. Britt. Ethan took a slow breath. Humans had survived worse than fear. Britt. That was something his grandfather used to say back on Earth. He straightened his uniform, shut down his station, and began the long walk toward the executive sector. As he moved through the glowing corridors, memory surfaced. When he had first arrived, other aliens barely acknowledged him. Britt. Some stared with curiosity, others with open disgust. But humans were seen as useful labor at best. Weak outsiders, at worst. But his endurance, his composure, and his moral clarity had shifted the perception of an entire species. Sharin watched him in these moments with a mixture of respect and quiet pride. Brit banned. The bond had begun as a necessity, a ceremonial requirement to preserve her authority. But over time, it had evolved into mutual trust, respect, and understanding. Brit Ethan had proven himself in ways no one had anticipated, not by force, but by being steadfast, clever, and unflinching. One evening, Sharin invited him to the observation deck again. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the transparent wall, galaxies swirling in brilliant patterns. "You could leave now," she said quietly. "Return to human space. You would be honored and celebrated." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I could," he admitted, "but I've grown attached, not just to this place, but to what we are building together." Sharin studied him for a long moment. "It is unusual for a human to make such a choice, Brit. Many would leave for safety, comfort, or recognition. Few would stay when the path remains uncertain." "Brit, I stayed," Ethan said, his voice steady, "because humans endure, and sometimes endurance is about more than survival." Pressed. "It's about making a difference," she nodded, her expression softening. "Then you understand why the Council respects you, even if they cannot admit it openly. Brit, you have proven that humans are more than the sum of what others expect them to be." Ethan looked down at his hands, thinking of the past trials, the Council's tests, the simulations, the fear. Brit. He had endured all of it, not for personal glory, but because it was necessary, because he chose to stand by someone who trusted him, and because he refused to fail when others expected him to. Brit, you have done more than any human or alien has done in this station, Sharin continued. You have shown them what endurance truly means. Ethan finally allowed himself a small smile. Brit, I just kept going. Sharin's eyes glimmered. Sometimes that is enough to change the galaxy. In the days that followed, the station gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but nothing was quite the same. Brit, aliens who had doubted humans now regarded them differently. Humans who had once been invisible began to gain subtle influence. Brit, quietly. Opportunities emerged. Traders consulted human perspectives. Brit, engineers adopted human techniques for efficiency. Soldiers considered human strategies in simulations. Desperate Ethan found himself increasingly relied upon for decisions that required balance and perspective. He was no longer just a worker or a participant in ceremonial rituals. Brit, he was a partner, valued for his insight, his calmness, and his unshakable integrity. One evening, as they prepared for a new council session, Sharin turned to him. Brit, do you understand what you've accomplished? Ethan shook his head. I survived. Brit, I stood by you. I didn't break. Breath. That's all I intended. But it is more than that, she said. Brit, you have shown the Dominion that humans are capable of things they never imagined. That is a legacy far beyond survival. Desperate, he smiled faintly. Sometimes humans surprise even themselves. Sharin laughed softly, a rare and gentle sound. Brit, indeed. And perhaps it is time they learn to rely on you more openly. Ethan nodded. Brit, the thought was both daunting and exhilarating. The station, the council, and perhaps the galaxy had begun to see humans as something more than fragile outsiders. Brit, they were survivors, thinkers, strategists, and, when needed, unshakable allies. As the council session began, Ethan walked beside Sharin, standing not behind her, not beneath her, but beside her. Brit, together they faced a room of leaders, representatives, and dignitaries from across Dominion space. For the first time, Ethan felt fully in his place. Brit, He was human. He was far from Earth, Brett. Yet here he had earned respect, trust, and a role that mattered. The council debated, discussed, and challenged proposals. Brett Ethan contributed, offering solutions, insights, and perspectives that earned nods of approval and reluctant admiration. Each time a challenge arose, he met it calmly, thoughtfully, and decisively. But by the session's end, one thing was clear. Humans had been underestimated, and that underestimation would not last. Ethan had become proof of humanity's endurance, ingenuity, and courage. Afterward, Shaurin and Ethan returned to the observation deck. The station stretched out below them, a living, breathing testament to countless species' coexistence. "You have done it," she said softly. "You have survived, endured, and influenced an entire council. Brett, you have proven humans can hold their own among the galaxy's most powerful." Ethan looked out at the stars, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Brett, I didn't do it for proof," he said. "I did it because it was necessary." "Brett, because we had to survive together." Shaurin nodded. "That is exactly why it worked." For the first time, silence between them was comfortable, filled not with tension or anticipation, but with understanding. But the bond that had begun as a ceremonial requirement had transformed into mutual respect, trust, and something neither of them could have anticipated: a partnership built on endurance, courage, and integrity.
The station below them was alive with energy, challenges, and opportunities.
But aliens who had doubted humans now paused before acting, reconsidered assumptions, and acknowledged that humans could endure more than they imagined. Humanity's reputation had begun to grow, not through conquest, but through character, resilience, and quiet strength. Ethan took a deep breath. The galaxy was vast, full of uncertainty and danger, but he felt ready. Not because he was the strongest or the fastest, but because humans endured. They adapted. They survived. And they could change the galaxy in ways no one expected. Shaurin's hand brushed lightly against his. "The rite has ended," she said, "but our work together is just beginning." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then let's begin." The stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck. Endless possibilities lay ahead. And for the first time, Ethan felt not fear, but purpose, determination, and the quiet, steady certainty that humanity could endure anything, and that sometimes surviving was only the first step toward greatness. As they stood together, human and alien, the station beneath them thrummed with life, potential, and promise. The galaxy had watched a simple human endure the impossible. It had learned to respect him, and in doing so, it had begun to respect all of humanity. Ethan knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was wide. Challenges would come. Tests would continue. But now, humans were no longer underestimated, and he, in his quiet way, had changed that forever. Side by side, Ethan and Shaurin turned to face the future, not as master and subordinate, not as ceremonial partners, but as equals, bound by trust, respect, and the knowledge that together they could survive, endure, and thrive where others expected failure. The stars beyond shone brighter than ever, reflecting possibilities that humanity had never dared to imagine, and Ethan, a simple human from Earth, was ready to meet them all. And now one of the most powerful beings on the station had called him to her chambers and claimed him as her husband. Nothing made sense. The guards outside Shaurin's chambers stepped aside without a word. That, alone, was unsettling. Usually they scanned, questioned, delayed. The door opened silently. Her chambers were vast, lit with soft blue light. Alien symbols glowed faintly along the walls. Shaurin stood near a tall window, her back to him, looking out into space. "You came," she said calmly. Ethan swallowed. "Director, I received your message. I believe there may have been an error, Britt. She turned slowly, her eyes focused on him with sharp intensity. Britt, there was no error. His mouth went dry. Then, I don't understand. That is expected, she replied. Britt, human customs differ greatly from ours. Sit. He hesitated, then obeyed, lowering himself onto a smooth stone seat. Britt Sharin remained standing. You are aware that my position is under threat? Ethan nodded carefully. Brent, rumors moved fast on stations like this. Political pressure, rival factions, power struggles. There is an ancient Vyrix law, she continued. In times of internal challenge, a leader may invoke the right of bonding. Desperate, it is a public declaration of stability, strength, and continuity. Ethan listened, his mind racing. Britt, the bonded partner is displayed before the council, she said. They must show composure under stress, loyalty under pressure, and moral balance. Britt, a weak partner is seen as proof of weak leadership. Ethan frowned. Then why me? Sharin's gaze sharpened. Britt, because no Vyrix male would stand beside me. They fear the consequences if I fall. Other species would use the bond to control me. A human has no political weight, Britt, that makes you dangerous in a different way. He understood part of it now. Britt, so this is symbolic? Yes. Relief flickered through him, but it did not last. Britt, if you refuse, she added calmly, the council will see it as admission of failure. I will be removed. Britt, you will be labeled an accomplice. Ethan's hands clenched. Britt, and if I accept, you will be tested. That word hung heavily in the air. Tested how? He asked. Britt, mentally, emotionally, publicly. No violence. Britt, no intimacy. Still, the idea of standing in front of alien elites who despised humans made his chest tighten. Britt, you may die from stress, she said bluntly, or survive and change how this station views your species. Ethan let out a slow breath. Britt. He thought of Earth, of humanity's long history of being underestimated, pushed aside, treated as lesser. He met her gaze. Britt, when does this happen? Tonight. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Of course it does. Sharin tilted her head slightly. Desperate, you are afraid? Yes, he said honestly. But I'm still here. Something unreadable crossed her expression. Britt, you will not be asked to pretend affection, she said. Only commitment. Britt, stand beside me. Speak when spoken to. Britt, do not break. Ethan thought for a long moment. Britt, humans were fragile, they said. Too emotional, but too weak. But humans had crossed oceans in wooden ships, survived plagues, rebuilt from ruins, and reached the stars with nothing but stubborn hope. Britt, I'll do it, he said quietly. Sharin studied him. Breath then. Slowly, she inclined her head. Then from this moment until the rite ends, she said, you are under my protection. Moments later, attendants arrived. Britt, alien beings of different shapes and sizes surrounded him, fitting ceremonial garments over his simple uniform. The fabric was light, flexible, designed to adapt to human physiology. Britt, someone had prepared this in advance. That realization sent a chill down his spine. But as they worked, whispers spread. A human? She chose a human? Is she mad? Ethan kept his face neutral. But he focused on breathing evenly, the way he had during emergency drills. When they finished, he barely recognized himself. Britt, the garment bore Vyrix symbols of unity and balance. He was not armed. Britt, not decorated, just present. Britt, a signal sounded. The rite was beginning. Britt, The council chamber was enormous, filled with tiered platforms where alien leaders watched. The air felt heavy with judgment. Desperate, Shahrein entered first. Ethan followed one step behind, exactly as instructed. Pressed, hundreds of eyes turned toward him. Some widened in disbelief, but others narrowed in contempt. A voice echoed through the chamber. Rector Shahrein, you invoke the right of bonding. Present your chosen partner. Sharin's voice was steady. Brit, I do. She extended her hand. Ethan hesitated for a fraction of a second, then took it, desperate. The contact was brief, formal, but symbolic. A ripple of reaction passed through the chamber. Brit, a human, someone muttered loudly. Another voice laughed. Brit, has the Dominion grown so desperate? Ethan felt heat rise in his face, but he did not look away. He stood straight, shoulders squared, eyes forward. Presiding elder leaned closer. Human, it said. Brit, do you understand what you are claiming? Ethan swallowed. I understand that I am here by choice. That earned a few murmurs. But do you swear loyalty for the duration of the bond? I do. Do you accept judgment without protest? Yes. The elder studied him. Interesting. The ceremony continued, each question designed to intimidate, to expose fear. Brit, Ethan answered calmly, simply. He did not embellish, Brit. He did not boast. When it ended, the council did not applaud, Brit, but neither did they object. As they exited, Shahrein spoke quietly. Brit, you did not falter. Ethan exhaled slowly. That was just the beginning, wasn't it?
Yes, she said.
Brit, and it will become much harder. He nodded. Humans are used to that. For the first time, she allowed a faint smile, Brit far above the station. Messages began to spread across alien networks. A human had stood in the right and did not break. Brit, and the night was far from over. The station did not sleep that night. But after the rite, Ethan was not returned to his quarters. Instead, he was escorted to a smaller chamber connected to Director Sharon's domain. Brit. It was not a prison, but it was not freedom either. 2 guards stood outside at all times, Brit. Their presence was silent, watchful. Ethan sat alone at a simple table, his thoughts racing. Brit. He had survived the first test. That much was clear, Brit. But the way the council had looked at him told another story. Curiosity had replaced shock, Brit, and curiosity in the Virex Dominion often led to danger. A soft tone sounded at the door. Brit, enter, he said. Shahrein stepped inside. Brit. She looked unchanged, calm, composed. But her energy felt sharper now, as if the night had awakened something. You should rest, she said. Breath, tomorrow will not be kind. Ethan smiled weakly. That seems to be a pattern. She studied him for a moment, then gestured for him to follow. Brit. They walked together through a narrow passage until they reached a private observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly beyond the transparent wall. Brit. You embarrassed several high-ranking officials tonight, she said. I didn't mean to, Ethan replied. Brit. That makes it worse, she said calmly. They expected fear, Brit, or anger. You offered neither, Brit. He leaned against the railing. On Earth, reacting badly usually makes things worse. Shahrein considered this. Brit, your restraint is unusual. That's one word for it. She turned to face him. Tomorrow, the council will begin the trials. Desperate trials? Social endurance, moral pressure, Brit, emotional stress, she explained. They will attempt to provoke you. They will insult your species. Brit, they may attempt to isolate you from me. Why? To see if the bond is real, she said. Brit, or if it will collapse under pressure. Ethan nodded slowly. And if it collapses, I fall, she said simply. Britt, and you will not leave this station. The honesty in her voice left no room for doubt. Silence stretched between them. Why me? Ethan asked again, more quietly this time. Shahrein looked back at the stars. Britt, because humans endure. That surprised him. When my people first encountered yours, she continued, we catalogued you as adaptable but weak, Britt limited strength. Short lifespan, Britt emotionally unstable. Ethan chuckled. Rask, that sounds about right. And yet, she said, you survived planetary collapse, internal wars, and still reached the stars without unified rule? That is not weakness, Britt. That is persistence. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized this was not just strategy for her, Britt there. The next morning came quickly. Britt. Ethan was escorted to the council complex alone. Shahrein entered from another corridor. Britt. The separation was intentional. The chamber was smaller than the right hall, but more oppressive. Britt. Council members sat close now, their eyes focused sharply on him. A tall, red-scaled alien stepped forward. Britt, human Ethan, it said. You will answer questions truthfully. I will, Ethan replied. Britt. The first questions were simple. His origin. Britt. His duties. His reason for working among aliens. Britt. Then the tone changed. Do humans always submit so easily? One asked. Britt, submission implies weakness, Ethan said. I chose to be here. A low murmur followed. Britt. Another leaned forward. Your species has no territory in Dominion space. Desperate, no power, no influence. Britt. Why should your presence mean anything to us? Ethan took a breath. Meaning is not always measured by territory. That answer earned a sharp hiss from somewhere in the chamber. Britt. The questions continued for hours, each one sharper than the last. Britt, they questioned human wars, human failures, human violence. Britt, they compared humans unfavorably to older, stronger species. Ethan listened. Britt, he answered when required. When silence was allowed, he remained quiet. Britt. At one point, a council member laughed openly. You expect us to believe a human can support a Dominion director? You barely support yourselves. Ethan felt the sting of truth in that, but he did not lash out. We struggle, he said, but we keep going. The elder presiding over the trial leaned back. That is not impressive. It is to us, Ethan replied. The room fell quiet. When the session ended, Ethan's legs trembled as he walked out. Britt. He had not realized how exhausted he was. Outside, Shahrein waited. Desperate. You did well, she said. I didn't feel like I did, he admitted. That means you are still grounded in reality, she replied. Come, Britt, there is little time. The next phase was worse. They were brought together for public appearances across the station. Britt, markets, command decks, Britt, worker halls. Everywhere, aliens stared. Some whispered. Others openly mocked. Britt. This is your bond? One merchant sneered. A human pet? Shahrein stopped walking. Britt. Ethan felt tension ripple through her. He gently shook his head once. Britt. She continued forward. That moment did not go unnoticed. Britt. By the third day, Ethan was running on little sleep. He was monitored constantly. Britt. His meals were delayed or interrupted. He was questioned at odd hours. Desperate, always polite. Always legal. Desperate, always exhausting. One evening, as he sat alone, a young Virax aide approached him. Why do you do this? She asked softly. Ethan looked up. Britt. Do what? Endure, she said. You could break, Britt. No one would blame you, he thought for a moment. Because if I break, it proves them right, she frowned. Britt, about humans? About anyone, he said. Word began to spread, but not loudly, not officially, but quietly, through corridors and data feeds. The human did not shout, Britt, did not threaten, did not beg, Britt he endured. On the 5th day, the council introduced a new tactic. They summoned Ethan alone and presented him with a choice. Desperate, a council member spoke. You may end the bond now. Breath publicly declared a misunderstanding. You will be returned to human space with compensation, Britt. Ethan's heart pounded. And Director Shawrine, he asked, Britt. She will face consequences, the member replied smoothly. Ethan understood, Britt. This was the real test. He closed his eyes briefly, Britt. He thought of Earth, of people who stood beside others even when it cost them. Britt. I refuse, he said. The council member's eyes narrowed. Britt. Why? Because she trusted me, Ethan replied, and humans do not abandon trust lightly. That answer echoed through the chamber. When he returned to Sharon, she looked at him differently now. They offered you escape, she said. Britt. Yes. And you refused? Yes. For no gain, she said. Ethan shrugged weakly. Britt. Sometimes that's the point. For the first time, she did not hide her reaction. Her eyes softened. Britt. The council is unsettled, she said. They do not understand you. Good, Ethan said. Desperate, neither do we half the time. That night, the pressure intensified. The final trials were coming, Britt. And across the station, one idea began to take root. Humans were not loud heroes, Britt. They were quiet, stubborn, and dangerously difficult to break. By the 7th day, the station felt different. It was not something Ethan could point to directly. The lights were the same, Britt. The corridors still hummed with energy. The guards still watched him closely, Britt. But the way people looked at him had changed. Before, they had been curiosity mixed with contempt, Britt. Now there was something else. Uncertainty. But Ethan noticed it first among the workers. Engineers paused when he passed. Britt. Merchants lowered their voices. Even some guards straightened, just a little, when he walked by. The human had not broken. That fact alone was becoming uncomfortable for many. The council responded the only way they knew how, Britt. They escalated. On the morning of the 8th day, Ethan was escorted not to a council chamber, but to an open forum broadcast across the station and beyond. Britt. Massive screens activated as he entered. Symbols of the Dominion rotated slowly above. Britt. Sharon stood at the center of the platform. Ethan was guided to stand beside her. Britt. This is new, he murmured. Yes, she replied quietly. Britt. They want witnesses. A senior counselor stepped forward, its voice amplified and cold. The right continues, it announced. Britt. Today, the bonded pair will face public evaluation. Ethan felt the weight of countless eyes, not just on the station, but on other worlds, other species. Britt. This evaluation will test moral alignment, the counselor continued. Human Ethan, you will answer freely. Ethan nodded once. Britt. The first projection appeared. Images of Earth's past. Wars, ruined cities. Starving populations. Britt. A voice spoke. Your species claims moral strength. Britt. Explain this. Ethan's chest tightened, but he did not look away. Britt. These are our failures, he said calmly. We do not deny them. A murmur spread. Other species eradicated such weakness, the voice pressed. Why did you not? Because we believe people can change, Ethan replied. Britt, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully. Britt, but we try. The next image appeared. Britt, human refugees fleeing disasters. You protect your own, the counselor said. Britt, yet you stand here for an alien leader. Why? Ethan glanced at Sharon's breath. She remained still, unreadable. Because the circle can grow, he said. Britt, it doesn't have to stay small. Somewhere in the forum, someone hissed in irritation. The questions grew sharper. Britt, they showed human prisons. Corporate exploitation. Britt, environmental collapse. Is this the endurance you boast of? The counselor demanded. Britt. Ethan felt the urge to defend, to argue, to shout. Instead, he spoke quietly. Britt, yes, he said. Endurance includes surviving our own mistakes. Silence followed. The counselor changed tactics. Director Sharon, it said. Britt, your bonded partner has no power, no status. Britt, no threat. If ordered, would he sacrifice himself for you? Ethan's breath caught. Britt. Sharon did not answer immediately. Yes, she said at last. Britt, he would. The counselor turned. Human, do you confirm this? Ethan did not hesitate. Britt, yes. A wave of reaction rolled through the audience. Shock. Britt, confusion. Disbelief. Britt, you gain nothing, the counselor said sharply. Ethan met its gaze. Britt, some things are not trades. The broadcast ended shortly after that. No formal conclusion. Britt, no declaration. That uncertainty unsettled the council more than open defiance ever could. Britt. Later that cycle, Ethan collapsed onto a bench in a quiet corridor. Exhaustion finally catching up with him. His hands shook. Britt. His vision blurred. He did not notice the figure approaching until a shadow fell across the floor. Britt. You should have taken the offer, said a low voice. Ethan looked up. Desperate, a tall alien stood there, its armor marked with council insignia. I didn't ask for advice, Ethan replied weakly. Britt. The alien crouched slightly, lowering its voice. You do not understand what you are in the middle of, human. Then explain, Ethan said. Britt. You are destabilizing balance, the alien said. Your presence weakens predictable outcomes. Ethan smiled faintly. We have that effect. The alien's eyes narrowed. If the director falls, others will blame you. If she stands, Ethan said, they'll blame me too. The alien straightened. Choose carefully how far you go. When it left, Ethan sat quietly, letting his breathing slow. That night, Sharon visited him again. Britt, you are becoming a problem, she said. He looked up. Britt, I'm sorry. She studied him. Do not apologize. You are becoming a symbol. I didn't mean to be, he said. Desperate symbols rarely choose, she replied. They are chosen. She paced slowly. Britt, several factions are divided. Some wish to end the rite early. Britt, others want to see how far you will go. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Britt, what do you want? She stopped. I want to stand, she said. Press. And I want you to survive, he laughed quietly. Those might be competing goals.
Perhaps, she admitted.
But humans are known for impossible balances. The next trial came without warning. Ethan was summoned alone to a chamber deep within the station. Britt, no broadcast, no audience. A single council elder waited. "This is not an official proceeding," the elder said. "Brit, it is an evaluation."
Of what? Ethan asked. Of intent? The elder activated a field.
Brit. The air grew heavy, pressing against Ethan's mind. Memories surged. Brit, fear, doubt. Brit, loneliness. "You may leave," the elder said. "Brit, speak one word and it ends." Ethan clenched his fists. His knees buckled, but he stayed standing. "Brit, what happens if I stay?" he asked through strained breath.
"You will experience what you fear most," the elder replied.
Brit, images flooded his mind. Earth burning. Brit, humanity erased. Being alone in the dark. Brit, Ethan trembled. But beneath the fear was something else. Brit's stubbornness. "No," he whispered. Pressure increased. Minutes passed, tar hours. Time lost meaning. Brit. Finally, the field dropped. Ethan collapsed to the floor, gasping. Brit. The elder watched him with something like respect. "You did not flee," it said. Brit, even when alone. Ethan laughed weakly. "Humans are very bad at giving up." The elder inclined its head slightly. "Brit, that may be your most dangerous trait." When Ethan returned, Shireen helped him to his feet. "They pushed too far," she said quietly. "They always do," Ethan replied.
News of the private trial leaked despite council efforts.
Whispers spread faster than before. Brit, the human endured psychic pressure designed to break leaders, and he survived. Desperate by the 10th day, support began to appear in unexpected places. A maintenance crew left him extra rations. Brit, a junior officer delayed a questioning session. An aide offered water without being asked. Brit, small acts. Quiet ones. Desperate, Sharon noticed. "They are watching you," she said. "Brit, I know," Ethan replied. "And learning," she added. Brit, the council called one final assembly before the climax of the rite. Their tone was colder now. Brit, more careful. "You have exceeded expectations," the presiding elder said. Brit, this has consequences. Ethan stood straight despite the exhaustion weighing on him. "Tomorrow," the elder continued, "the bond will face its final judgment." Ethan glanced at Sharon. "Brit, what happens tomorrow?" he asked. She answered softly. "Brit, tomorrow they decide whether humans are still considered weak." Ethan nodded. He did not feel like a hero. Brit, he felt tired, scared. Brit, very human. But, he also felt something else. Brit, purpose. As the assembly ended and the lights dimmed, one thought echoed through the station. Brit, if this was what a human looked like under pressure, what would humanity become when it stood together? Brit, and the galaxy was about to find out. The day of the final judgment arrived with a quiet tension that blanketed the entire station. Brit. Ethan woke early, his body heavy from days of little rest, but his mind was alert. There was no time for fear. Brit. The final test would not forgive hesitation. Shireen met him outside his quarters, her presence calm but commanding. Brit, her silver eyes, usually unreadable, held a faint spark, a mixture of hope and trust. "You are ready," she said simply. Brit. Ethan shook his head. "I don't feel ready. Readiness is irrelevant," she replied. Brit, courage matters, and you have shown that. He exhaled. A slow, deliberate breath. Brit. Over the following cycles, Ethan began a new role beside Shireen, not as a subordinate, but as a partner in influence. While humans were still rare in Dominion leadership circles, Ethan's presence brought balance and perspective. Brit, his decisions, while sometimes unorthodox, were respected for their clarity, fairness, and unexpected insight. He participated in council discussions, offering practical solutions to complex problems. He coordinated logistics for multi-species operations, often finding simple yet effective answers that alien leaders had overlooked. He did not command through authority, but through competence and unwavering integrity. But rival factions still existed. Some resented his influence, Brett. Others plotted quietly to test him, to force him into mistakes. But Ethan had learned that fear, intimidation, and insult did not sway him, Brett. He met each challenge calmly, analyzing, predicting, and acting with precision. One evening, a message arrived from an outer colony. Brit pirates had blockaded a supply route, threatening both human and alien lives. Many of Sharon's advisors hesitated, debating strategies, calculating risk. Ethan reviewed the situation quickly. "There's a weak point in their formation," he said. "We can reroute the transports under cover of the debris field and use decoy signals to draw their patrols away." Sharon raised an eyebrow. "Do you think it will work?"
"I know it will,"
he replied simply. The operation was executed flawlessly. Supplies reached their destinations without loss. Reports of Ethan's strategy spread, quietly reinforcing the idea that humans were not just capable, but exceptional when underestimated.
The Council began to treat him differently.
Desperate questions once meant to intimidate were now posed for insight. Aliens who had mocked him openly before now sought his opinion in subtle ways.